Hello, welcome back. So today I was just going to talk a little bit about my history in terms of health, and I just thought, well, somebody might be able to relate to this or not, but it's just part of the story. So I had a pretty healthy childhood as far as I remember. I know I was born with jaundice, but then that went away soon after being born, and then I did have some kind of little kidney issue when I was a toddler. Nobody seems to remember what that was, and my mom has since passed away. She's probably the only one that would really know the details. But I was totally functional as a child. Rarely got sick. When I got sick, I got over it normally like every other kid did. I can remember when I got chicken pox, and it was just really no big deal. It was like a couple days and then it was gone. That's it. So I was pretty healthy as a kid, and then in my middle school years, I had some asthma that started. Basically, it was more like endurance induced. So it wasn't just regular asthma where I was reacting to everything or the air or anything like that. It was just when I ran track, I would run out of oxygen after my little relay and I would have to get an inhaler. Same thing when I did gymnastics. But for the most part, I had a pretty healthy childhood, and I was in a happy home with lots of nature around as terms of where my house was. Lots of loving family. My family was very social, lots of nice neighbors. So everything was pretty much really even keeled in my life before high school. Once I got to high school, things changed a little bit. My parents started really arguing a lot, and they were having major relationship problems. Before that, if they had a problem, I would have never known it. They always acted really happy. We were always together on vacations and family parties, and we hosted most of the family parties. And so in high school, they started obviously, having tension. That was obvious. And then overhearing them arguing. And then at some point, I think it was my sophomore year, they actually started sort of talking to me about their problems. My mom much more so than my dad, but definitely I was sort of put in the, I wouldn't say formal therapy role, but I was learning and knowing a lot more than I should have for my age. I didn't know what to do with the information, like, okay, mom's unhappy, dad's unhappy, there's problems, what am I supposed to do about this? I'm supposed to be focused on my life in high school, not all your problems and things. But I would listen, and feeling bad about how they felt bad, I would try to say little suggestions sometimes, whatever I could come up with as a sophomore in high school. But that was sort of in the background of my life. I was still your average teenager, kind of self-absorbed with, well, what am I doing? I'm on gymnastics team, and I'm doing this and that with my friends and having my first job. And so even though it was happening in the background, it wasn't really ruining my life or anything like that at that time. But I did start to have some blood sugar problems in high school, so that was sort of the health thing that surfaced in high school. We found out when I passed out once at a birthday party, and then they took me to the doctors, and it turned out my blood sugar was kind of all over the place, really high, really low. And they told my mother to stop giving me all sugar, just no food with sugar. So she bought the ketchup with no sugar and the ranch dressing with no sugar and all that. And we kept up with it for a while, and I actually did remember feeling better. And I didn't even really know that I had not felt, perfect before that. But I felt a little better, but it was just really hard to keep up with. And now that I'm a mother, I understand that would be really hard to keep up with. So we kind of just slacked off, and she watched a little bit more about what I was eating and things like that. But overall, life just kept moving on, and we would make sure I didn't skip meals or I didn't skip breakfast or something like that, and things were fine. And things pretty much maintained like that. I kind of did whatever I wanted. I had tons of energy. I was a little bit of a risk taker, so I was kind of a wild child, I guess you could say, a little bit. Very free spirit, very social. I definitely had ADHD and still do, but nobody knew that at the time. Back in the 80s when I was growing up, in the early 90s, no one really looked into that as much, and especially not for girls. So that was definitely a little bit of a factor I see looking back, as in terms of some of my behavior, and some of the things I struggled with as an early child, like reading and things like that. But you know, as far in terms of health, I was kind of just going along. Everything was pretty happy-go-lucky and pretty easy, until I got to the point where I started having kids, and that's kind of where things sort of took a turn, and I will pick up on that in the next video.